doesn't let you see it all.
Sir?
Good evening, ghouls and goblins, and welcome to the show. Hey, that might be our intro going forward. There you go.
I like it.
In case you were wondering, most of this shit is not written down. We have a little bit of notes in terms of what we thought about the movie as we watched it. At least I
I
have
don't know
some
what
notes.
this we stuff
I was gonna
is.
say, do you
Yeah.
take notes at all, or is this all just memory?
Mostly memory.
Nice.
I
Hell
hope
yeah,
that's
dude.
impressive.
That is impressive.
It-
Yeah,
it
most
is?
of
Okay.
mine is yeah, all the other jokes, the bio, all that. That's all just
Yeah.
that's all just improv. So yeah, this introduction off the top of my head, in spite of being a writing teacher, I fucking hate writing things down. I prefer improv actually. I took some
Oh,
improv
I could not
classes.
be.
I took some
I could not
improv
be more
classes
different.
in
Oh, did you?
college, and I did be in order to once I figured out once I figured out I wasn't gonna make it as a writer,
Oh,
you know, that wasn't gonna happen. Um, so when I was in California, and I was like, I guess I gotta get back into educating. One of the things I always hated was I kind of am more of an introverted person by nature, right? Like most of the
mhm.
people I grew up with in high school, if they met me, they would probably not assume that teaching or doing any kind of like public speaking would be something I did. Because in public, I'm not much of a talkative person. Still to this day, I'm not.
Yeah, fair.
I have kind of a whole like aversion to that for my
Oh
own
no,
particular reasons.
you are
Um,
preaching to the choir, sir.
I have a little bit of public avoidance disorder, but in
Yep.
spite of that, one of the things that I was able to help me kind of come out of my shell a little bit is with some of that some of like improv classes when I was taking drama classes in college, and a little bit in
Oh.
California when I lived in there for a little bit, doing like some improv at like the church. Actually, that's where they used to meet at.
Oh,
There's
okay.
Central California for you. Improv at
Yeah.
the church, kids. Yeah. Um, but yeah, no, that's where they used to meet at, and yeah, we used to do some of it there. Um,
Okay.
when I was living in there for a little bit, the year and a half I lived in California,
Hmm.
and then in college I did a little bit of it just because one of my professors recommended it. Because
Oh.
they would always be like, your essays are really insightful, like you have a lot of good ideas, but then in class when we ask people to share, you say shit all. And so
Oh.
like they were like, we, it would behoove you to be able to illustrate your point through the verbal display of words. And I was like, hey, you got something to say there. So
Yeah.
tried to get a little bit better at it. It's a work in progress, but yeah, I took like speech classes when I was a kid. I was in like the
Hey,
classes with
same.
the quote unquote the special kids. Yeah,
Hey, I did the
I
same
was
thing.
I was in those classes because they were like, why won't he talk in public? And I was like,
Oh my
well,
God, you
I have a
same
little bit of
story.
a little bit of like a lisp, and that was a
Oh,
thing when I
yep.
was a little kid. So I had a real bad stutter. Like, oh God,
I
I was
can't believe
such a
we've
bad
never
stutter.
talked about this.
Yeah, we've never really talked about our
No, because
mutual
this is
childhoods
we have the exact same story.
of being labeled as a special needs child inadvertently because of a stutter.
Well,
And you're like, that kid must be fucking stupid. Like, yeah, that's it. Yeah.
for whatever reason, up until the third grade, I didn't talk to a single teacher. I don't know
See,
why.
I didn't have that problem. Like I would talk to people, like I had friends and like I could make
Yeah.
friends pretty easily. And like one-on-one, I was a very talkative person. Like Jamie, who we're doing the Fallout show with.
Oh yeah, I've been
And
watching those.
he'll show up on an episode to talk about a movie soon. Him and I
Awesome.
hit it off like right away, like day one of kindergarten, like or
Hmm.
first grade rather. We were like friends. And I would talk his fucking ear off about everything.
Oh
But
yeah.
like in
No,
class, I didn't want to talk to any of the other kids,
right.
mostly just because like I feel really awkward in public settings. One on one, fine, like
Yeah.
perfectly fine.
There
Probably
were.
better than like talking in public still to this day. But
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Now like um my history with that, I guess. I was fine talking to other kids. Like I could, I do that
yeah,
just fine. But for whatever reason, talking to a teacher really intimidated me. I don't know why.
I have some
But
students like that now. That like as soon as you talk to like an adult, they get like really timid and shy, and then
yep.
when they're around their peers, they're like fine. And so
Yeah.
it's like, all
See,
right,
but
that's fair.
and
I
I
get
will
it.
say,
I get it.
they kind of worked it out of me when I was in the third grade, and then
Mhm.
by the fourth grade on, I never ever shut the fuck up. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
yeah,
right. Like, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. See, my
But
whole
but they
after they worked it
they
out of
course
me,
corrected a little too hard.
all their major focus of working at was my stutter. Like they were like the
Yeah,
kid needs to not stutter so damn much. And then I got that worked out, and
yeah.
my wife will notice that I have like a little tick that I do sometimes.
Hmm.
And I don't know if any other stutterers out there do this as well. You'll have to tell me. But the reason I stutter sometimes is because my mind is going a little bit faster than my mouth can keep up with. And
Hmm.
so sometimes the words I have to slow myself down and create a natural pause. And I say the word a lot, not
Hmm.
really necessarily as a way to buy time, but more as to give my mouth a chance to catch up to what thoughts I have in my head, so I don't just
Yeah.
stutter endlessly. Or I could do it the un-PC way and just say fuck a lot, which is what I grew up doing a lot of. But
Like a Boston way of doing
like
it.
a Boston, like fucking, like
Fucking
what the fucking, yeah, right. So trying to not do that as much.
yeah.
Boston and California also very
Oh, do they do
much.
that?
Oh hell yeah, dude. Fuck is like in every other. It's like a comma, right? You might as well learn that
Yep.
as part of like punctuation in grammar school. It's like comma,
Oh man.
semicolon, fuck. Like fuck is a more hyperbolic comma, right?
Yeah, really. Well, I was gonna say also, speaking of like a similarity of backgrounds on this, church definitely, like you said, the improv at church or
Yes.
being, just incidentally being at church helped you out. Pardon me. One of the things that definitely helped me with public speaking was church because I was in like youth leadership and I would be kind of tasked with getting up in front of the congregation sometimes. Not a comfortable place for, well, it
Yeah.
has become a comfortable place for me, because I did
Yeah.
that. You saw me do that stage play one time, that musical,
Yeah. Yeah.
where I had no singing parts. That that made me feel something like, okay, I guess I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
But
Writing on
when
the wall.
yeah, exactly. So like I'm way more comfortable being up on like stage or in front of people than I am like being in the crowd at
Yeah.
all. And that's a weird thing probably, but um then like when it comes to improv, at that same playhouse, there was an audition to like another to do another play, and this director, the guy that was going to direct it, he wanted the audition to be improv.
Mhm.
And that's when I realized I don't know how to do improv because
There is a
I fell
formula to
apart.
it. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
There
I
is
was
like a
not.
way that people do it. Yeah. It's not as loose form as people necessarily think it is.
I found that out the hard way.
My ideal form of like of what we do basically is kind of like what we do behind the scenes. We haven't even talked about this fucking movie yet. Eventually we'll
Oh
get
yeah,
there.
that's right.
There was a natural segue with your church leadership thing, but I just kind of let
Yeah,
it breeze right on by me, right?
we've had
No,
a few
but
segues.
you setting them up, and I'm not interested tonight. This movie kind of sucks.
Yes.
I'm
Oh
looking
God.
forward to moving on from Left Behind. Let me tell you. No,
Absolutely.
but like my ideal form of improv is I guess kind of like the Christopher Guest method, which is like there's a
Yes.
loose framework of what I'm looking for, and
Okay.
then
Yeah.
from there just kind of have fun and I'll fix it in editing, which is kind of what we do
That's
on the show. Like
yeah,
we
basically.
don't have a script. If there's a
So.
certain, I kind of tell you like here's kind of what we're going to talk about in brief, like some bullet
Hmm.
points, and then we just hit record and we go.
Yeah.
And if we've, from whatever happens after that, I'll fix it if
Eh,
it's bad. It's not probably exactly, but
you know.
I not really. I didn't really give us necessarily like it has to be this, it has to be that. It's like, hey, it can be any
Exactly.
number of things. Right? Let's see what
The way you're
happens.
talking about that, that does actually remind me of that audition we did because there were a couple of different kinds of like scenes we did.
Hmm.
Some that were more like we were kind of just like, it's that one where people are just doing interacting and
Yeah.
then they freeze and then the next person has to come in and like start like making it up, and
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
couldn't do that.
Yeah,
I fell
that is
apart.
hard. That
I
is
was
hard.
like, I don't know what I'm saying.
That is
I
hard.
asked a question that could only be answered with a no, and I was like, well, that's already bad. So like I can't handle that part. But there
Do
was a
you
part where
have
they
a
kind
hammer? No.
of yeah, basically like I was like,
Shit.
is I was like, and it was like I didn't know how else to start. I was like, I don't understand this situation. So but whenever I was given like character attributes to work with, I
Yeah.
kind of rolled with it. Like
Yeah.
as
It
long as
makes it a lot
so I'm
easier. You got
yeah,
something to
having
work
that
off of.
absolutely like that,
Yeah,
and,
yeah,
I
yeah.
like that you said Christopher
And
Guest way of doing
that's
it
honestly
because that stuff's
that's kind of like what teaching is too, honestly, in some ways. Like you have a
oh
lesson plan, you have a framework, but 99% of the time that's not how it's going to go. Like,
oh
right,
yeah.
the bells are going to be off, someone's going to show up late, some kid's going to be acting like an asshole. You have to stop what you're
Kids don't do
doing and
that.
talk to you. Yeah, you have to stop what you're doing and go address something in the back of the room. Like you have to learn how to like roll with punches. And I think the better the teachers are, the ones that are able to kind of go with that and realize that the lesson plan is like a framework. It's a script. You're
Hmm.
not beholden to it. You have the framework to kind of get funky and play around a little bit in there. And I think
Yeah,
that's kind of works what better. I wish they
I
would
think
have
so.
done that with this movie. There
Hey,
you go.
there we go.
Back to topic. So,
That
for
was
those of you
awesome.
that skipped the first 10 minutes of us talking about it, nothing, let's talk about Left Behind 3, which came out in 2005 and
Hmm.
has the same old cast, but a different director here. An interesting
Yes.
director, Craig
Uh,
Baxley. Are you
Let me
familiar
tell
with this
you,
man?
I I actually like I wasn't really all that curious about the director until I
Yeah.
started watching it, and I was like,
Yeah.
"Oh, this is a very different director." I had to look him up.
Yeah. So it was a stunt director who
Yep.
also did second unit, but main director for a lot of movies and some interesting ones.
Yeah.
Interesting ones. Action Jackson is one, which connects to
Yes.
our review of Neon City because it has the same actress in that
Hmm.
during when she was kind of popular for that little period of time in the 80s there. One of Prince's pop icons there that he created
Oh
and kind
yeah.
of yeah. What was her name? Do you remember? I've literally her
I
name is blanking on me right now. I have to go back and listen to our
uh
Neon City review.
I'm cheating, but I can tell you in a second.
Yeah, let me
Vanity.
know. Vanity, yes, Vanity from the 1980s. Yeah, she was in a
Yes.
post-apocalyptic movie with Michael Ironside, a Canadian production that we reviewed with our dear friend Dominic from
Yeah.
Monster Fun Time Go podcast. And yeah, he that movie stars Vanity. She's also in Action Jackson, directed by the same director here. Um,
Hmm.
he also directed two really underrated late 80s, early 90s movies that are really slept on. The first one is Dark Angel. Have you ever seen that one? It's also called I Come in Peace. It's a Dolph Lundgren
Oh.
movie.
Oh no, I haven't seen that one.
So it's really fucking good.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a Terminator ripoff. We probably will watch it at some point on the show, honestly. But yeah, it is a really
Awesome.
surprisingly good movie that at the time when it came out was kind of unfairly shit on for being a little derivative, but with
Uh.
time has kind of become like a pretty good movie. I think there's got a little bit of a cult audience around it too, honestly. At least if it
All right.
doesn't, it needs one. Um,
Yeah.
Another good movie that's really underrated, that same director here, Stone Cold, which was that Brian Bosworth movie.
Think I know which one
From
you're talking about.
is a 1980s kind of like action movie ripoff starring Brian Bosworth, who was a failed football player who was mostly known for getting his fucking asshole ran out by Bo Jackson,
Yeah.
and being kind of like a steroid dude, I believe. But when his
Oh, okay.
football
Yeah.
career kind of ended, he got into movies, and I guess he was supposed to be the next big action star. That didn't work out, but
No.
he is the lead in a kind of underrated, so bad it's good movie called Stone Cold from the 1980s and early 1990s. Y'all should check that one out if you never have as well.
I
He
definitely.
directed a lot of other
Oh,
direct-to-video and
yeah. I was
action
gonna say that
movies as
Stone
well.
Cold. I definitely remember the poster of it, like
Hmm.
the tape cover or
Oh yeah,
whatever
yeah. The
back
tape cover
at
was
the
very noticeable. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
yeah
yeah,
going to the well in our tiny little town we had a Radio Shack that had
yeah. Oh,
well, that's
nice.
where we
Yeah,
rented. We didn't
yeah.
have any
We
fancy
we went
blockbuster.
to Albertsons and we went to Video One. Those were our two spots as a
Nice.
family back in the day. Yeah.
Yep.
Um, he also, beyond directing lots of other, like I said, lots of other kind of action
Yeah.
movies. And he also directed a couple episodes of The Lost Room, which is a really underrated TV show on the Sci-Fi Network back in the day, as well as some episodes of Leverage and Human Target.
Hmm.
Um, connects to our show because he also directed the stunts for Omega Man, which we reviewed. He
Yeah.
directed the stunts for Conquest of the Planet of the Apes and Battle of the Apes, which are two movies that we will review soon. And
Yes.
he also did Poseidon Adventure as well, and Logan's Run. So kind of was
Awesome.
really popular in the stunt world in terms of directing the stunts and doing some choreography there. But also was behind the scenes being a director and did some really underrated movies up until he came to this production led by our same cast, Kirk Cameron.
Yeah.
Same cast basically. No one really new shows up except for
Oh,
Louis
well.
Gossett Jr., who is joining us as the president, Gerald Fitzgerald,
Oh,
and
it was awesome.
he gets a lot of screen time. He pretty much is the main character of this movie, so to say.
I
Um,
mean,
he kind of takes over most of the
oh,
movie.
it is the best part of the movie.
He does make
Like,
the movie quite a bit better. He does make the
oh
movie
yeah.
quite a bit
Well,
better.
like Iron Eagle,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Officer and a
Enemy
Gentleman,
Mine.
off Enemy of
Yes.
Mine, Jaws 3D. He
Yes.
also did
Like,
one of the voices in for Half-Life 2. There's a video game
oh, I didn't
reference
know
for you
that.
guys there. Yeah, that's a deep one. He was
Yeah.
also in Roots, Officer and a Gentleman, like we talked
Hmm.
about. It's over 200 movies the dude has been in.
Oh
Oscar
yeah.
winner as well. So
Ah.
big
So,
time, big time, big time good. Big time
yeah, getting to see him in anything is good. But also,
good.
like, this director definitely elevated. Like,
Yeah.
it turned this into a pretty decent action movie, like a
True.
kind of like an action B movie or something,
Yeah.
you know?
It is kind of like a weird B actiony movie. Of all of the Left Behind movies, it's the best one and the worst one, and
Yeah,
that's kind of at the
it's
same time. It's a paradox.
oh,
It's a
it
paradox.
is. It was
Um,
very painful in that part.
yeah, our only other cast member joining us is the vice president, who is played by Charles Smith, who has been in a bunch of movies. He's been in Starman, American Graffiti, and American Graffiti 2. For those of you
Yeah.
that didn't know, there is an American Graffiti 2. He also
Oh
was
yeah.
in Deep Impact, which we'll talk about at some point.
Yeah.
But beyond just being an actor, Charles Smith was also a director. So he just directed both of the Dolphin Tales movies. And then, in a weird turn of fate, he also directed the old horror movie called Trick or Treat that stars
Huh.
Ozzy Osbourne and Gene Simmons. Um, that is
Oh.
a weird connection that the guy that directed the Dolphin Tales movies also is in Left Behind 3 and also directed Ozzy Osbourne and Gene Simmons in a horror movie back in the 1980s. But all of that happened with the same guy. So Charles Smith is a complicated man to say the least, and he is
Yeah.
coming here as the vice president who unfortunately is not in the movie for very long, which kind of sucks honestly.
It does suck.
Um
He was good.
kind of wish, yeah, he was great. I wish he would stay around for a little bit longer. So but that's our cast and our director, same writer as
We
last time.
we do get a new love interest that I guess we're supposed to just accept has been there, I guess.
Oh, Hattie? Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
not even Hattie.
Oh, who are you
What
talking
was her
about?
name? Amanda?
Oh, yeah, Amanda shows up. She's a character. I believe she was in the other ones as well, but maybe as a
Was
different
she?
actress. I'm not sure. Also, Bruce is recast here. So, the
Oh
original
yeah.
Clarence Gillard did not return to this movie, and
He
we'll
was
get to
kind of
why
too
in
good
just
for
a
it.
minute. We'll get to why in just a moment because there's
Ugh.
two conflicting answers here, and
Oh.
we'll see which one we believe. Um, so the background of this movie, and this is why I refer to the second one as Hobbit 2, so this would be Hobbit 3,
Yeah.
because this movie is based on just the last 50 pages of the second novel of a 12 novel anthology of books.
Oh, I did not know that. Also, I didn't
Yeah,
know there were 12
there's
Left
apparently
Behind books.
12 Left Behind books in the anthology. There's
Uh,
also two more movies, which are just remakes, but there's
yeah.
also a video game that came out based off of
What?
this movie. Yes, there was a video game that came out to coincide with Left Behind 3. I almost purchased it at one point in my life. We'll talk about that here in just a
Yeah.
second. And so, yeah, there's also a spin-off that they did that has a little spin-off movie based off of the
What?
Left Behind for Kids series.
What?
Yeah, there's a Left Behind for Kids, like Left Behind for Teens kind of thing that he did as well. Yeah,
That is
God said, "Be
painful.
plentiful and spread your seed." Remember?
Get as much of that cash
Get
as
as
you
much as
can.
that cash as you can, maybe. Ooh, Lord. Yeah. So I was referring to it as Hobbit 2 and 3 in the sense that the Hobbit book is very short, and they made 3
Uh-huh.
movies out of that motherfucker. They made 3 movies out of the first, like, 190 pages of this movie, of this book series.
Wow.
You could have condensed all 3 of these movies into just one movie and been
Yeah.
fine.
Oh
There's a
yeah.
lot of padding in all 3 of these movies, and this one
Oh.
has a lot of fucking padding
Oh,
that you
it's
could remove
painful.
and just put it into the second movie and had a better fucking movie.
Yeah.
Or not. What do I know?
Well, yeah. See, this movie suffered from two different things. Well,
Mm-hmm.
I say suffered. I suffered because the direction was pretty decent. I
Yeah.
liked the action. I liked all
Yeah.
that. It was very interesting visually.
Yeah.
And then there was the writing and the
The
dialogue.
writing and the acting. Oh boy. Some
Oh,
of the acting is bad. Kirk Cameron
it's
sucks in
oh,
this
and can I just
movie.
say
Just fucking sucks.
they did a couple close-ups of him, and I was like, "Oh, Kirk Cameron, you look like shit."
He does not look well. He does not look well. He looked
No.
like he was going through something in 2005. Looked like he was
Yeah.
really going through something in 2005.
Like, I was
Speaking
like,
of going through something in 2005, Clarence
"Yep."
Gillard Jr. chose not to return. He said originally that it was a scheduling issue and it was just something that happens, you know. But
Yeah.
later on, he would recant those statements and say that he felt that the film's message did not align with his Catholic theology. And
Oh, no, not at
I
all.
wrote down in big letters, no fucking shit, Clarence. Like it literally, the whole premise of it goes against the idea of original sin. Like the whole fucking premise of it goes against the idea of original sin, which is kind
Uh,
of a big deal in Catholic theology, right?
yes, it is.
That's the whole fucking thing. And it took him 2 movies to figure that out. Did you read the fucking scripts? Like, did you look at the, like, what did you think these movies were about?
Yeah, did any
The
research on
part
Kirk
where they were like,
Cameron?
all
Like,
children are gone. All children are
all
gone. And
children
you
are
weren't
gone.
like, wait a minute.
Yeah,
Children, and I didn't know. Apparently, Clarence did not put those 2 and 2
not
together.
not even the unbaptized?
Oh,
Like,
God. What a fucking dork. Well, he's gone. And the guy that replaces him, I didn't bother looking up. He's
no.
fucking terrible. He is
Oh my
not a
god, it
good
was
actor in
awful.
this. He was absolutely terrible actor.
It's like
If
they
this is
got
him being his best, then hats off to you, sir. I'm glad you got a paycheck. Continue to work the man for all the money you can. My
yes.
hats are off to you. Golf clap, golf clap. But your performance in this movie is fucking atrocious.
Oh yeah, no, it's like they just grabbed like a caterer or something and was like, we need a guy, you know.
Well, yeah, basically they were like, "Who has a black friend that would like to show up and make
Basically,
$2,000?" And
that's basically
somebody
it.
was like, "I know a guy," and that's it.
And
Probably
that
was Kirk
and
Cameron's friend. A lot of people in this movie are Kirk Cameron's friends. Hattie, the girl that marries Ray, that's Kirk
oh
Cameron's
yeah.
wife. She's in almost every single movie Kirk Cameron has been in since about 1989,
Okay, so no,
and
I did not
she was
know
in one
that.
episode of Seinfeld. That's about it.
I
Yeah.
I
So
did.
Ray marries Hattie at the beginning of this movie, basically, which is a scene that unfortunately we get to see all of, and all 14
Oh,
minutes and 9 seconds of it. Yes, the
when Ray
entire
marries
marriage
Amanda.
scene. The entire scene. Oh, yeah.
Oh
Sorry,
yeah.
Amanda, not Hattie. Yeah, Amanda. Amanda is
Well, because Amanda
Ray's wife.
is
Yeah. And
basically like a
Amanda
blank
is
slate.
Kirk's wife in real life. Yeah, she just kind of
Okay, see now
shows
that
up
I
and is
didn't
like,
realize.
I've been here the whole time. And it's like, really? Have you?
Yeah,
That's
I
surprising.
didn't see it. Were you
We don't need
behind
to know
people?
about it.
Like,
She was
okay.
behind people the whole time. Just sitting there, just sitting there. Just standing doing nothing. Oh, so apparently, this is what the internet tells me, and I'm not
Yes.
going to read the books to verify if this is true, but
Not if there's 12.
apparently the book and this movie substantially different.
All right, I can
Good to
believe
know.
that.
Good to know. I wonder if the president has superpowers in the book, because in the movie he does, and it's kind of silly. Uh,
Oh, there's it
Speaking
is
of
so
silly,
silly.
Here's a review that I read from IMDb, written by a man named Nathan from about 20 years ago. He
Oh,
said, "Too well made to be campy enough for non-believers."
I like how far that you couldn't hold it.
I'm sorry, Nathan, if you're still alive. Too well made to be campy. It's too well made. I wonder if it was the rocket launcher scene that he got to, and he was like, "Oh, now this is Hollywood production values here. That that looks
Oh,
fucking good. That's too well made." Oh
oh,
my lord. No, Nathan, I think it's not. I
it's
don't
not
think it was too well made.
too well made. In fact, I
Oh
can't think of
god.
the least, I guess, applicable thing I could say about this movie.
Yeah.
I
Nothing
feel like
else. That
they
should be the
made the.
box art. Too well made. Quote, some dickhead on the internet. There you go. There you go. Too well
I
made.
mean,
Too well made to open in theaters because just like the second one, it never did. It opened in
no.
3,000 churches instead. So we don't have any figures on how much money it made. It cost about $4 million, and most of that, I'm guessing, went to the budget of just blowing a bunch of shit up because
Yeah.
they blow a bunch of shit up in this movie. Shit blows up real good, like.
Yep.
And yes, a video game was made of the movie, and the video game is a weird strategy game that
Oh.
at one point in my life I almost purchased. When I was in college, I decided to stop taking my insomnia medicine, which meant
Mm.
that I sometimes would find myself with staying up with nothing to do. And this was the early aughts, 2005, 2006, 2007, around that time period in
Mm.
small town West Texas. And so, what was there to do? Go to Walmart and just walk around, usually inebriated, very
Mhm.
inebriated. And I would do this with my college roommates all hours of the night. And several times in the video game section of the local Walmart in the clearance bin for $17 or so was the Left Behind video game. And it was one of those things that plagued me for a long time because I would see it every single time I went there. And it was
Yeah.
always like, that's too much money for that. I don't want to buy that. Like that, no. And it would go down in price. I think it got down to like $7 or so. And I decided, like, next time I see it, I'm buying it. And the next time I went there, it was gone. And I never saw it ever again. And it's one of those things that now I kind of regret because I would love to
Yeah.
be able to load that shit up and play it, and I'm sure it's terrible. I could find a ROM of it online for free, definitely. I've watched
Yeah.
playthroughs of it. It looks
Oh.
shitty. You basically control the Tribulation Force, and your goal is to strategically move across the map and convert non-Christians. And
Uh,
you do that by setting them on fire.
what?
Yeah, setting them on fire.
Oh.
That's
Oh
what you do
my.
to non-Christians, right? You
I
fucking
believe
burn
that.
them in
I
God's
was gonna say
fire.
there's a lot of fundies that probably think that. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, no, speaking of the
Yeah.
tribulation force,
Yeah.
can I say how disappointed I am in kind of both of us? We haven't made a single tribbing joke once.
Trying to rise above it. Trying to rise above. Trying to rise
Well,
above.
speak for
I'm not.
yourself.
You you find your own God in this universe, right? So speaking of finding your own God, the
Nice.
movie that did come out to theaters the day this movie came out, on October 21st, 2005, this movie was coming out to your local Baptist church, and in theaters you could go watch Dwayne the Rock Johnson in Doom, which came out on this same day.
Oh, yeah. Much better at fighting the forces of hell.
Exactly. Well, we're going to take a break and we're going to come back and talk about the music that was in the charts on this day because this is going to spur its own separate conversation. I can already
Ooh.
tell. Because who was number one is, I think we're going to have a lot to say about. And so
Oh.
we'll come back and talk about that and then get into the plot of this movie. And there's not much to talk about. This
I was
movie
gonna say,
doesn't
so
have
it's
much of a plot, it's pretty
not
straightforward.
really. It's
It's fairly simple. So we'll be right back and we'll see you guys in a second.
Hey, joining you guys live in progress for a little announcement. If you've been enjoying the podcast on YouTube, you can now also find it on Spotify by searching Welcome to the End of the World podcast. Same thing on Apple. Search for Welcome to the End of the World podcast. You can also find links on the YouTube page to make it real easy for you. Just stopping in for a little update on that from future Matt, returning back to past Matt.
It's a me, Luigi. I have a gun.
Oh,
Anyway,
I was about to say easy.
we're getting out to a spicy start.
That's a spicy
speaking of-
meatball.
This is spicy meatball. Speaking of spicy meatballs, this movie came out on October 21st, 2005, and we enter into the realm of Travis trivia. So, Travis, any guesses as to the top? I wrote down the top 10. Looking for any of them at all. Then I'll tell you who. I will say most of these people are still rather popular, and one of them is been in the news a lot recently for some opinions of his.
Oh, okay, that might be something different.
Yeah. We also have a punk band gone pop, doing one of their popular songs. Yeah, a '90s punk band was still somehow on the charts in 2005 with
I have an idea.
Yeah. All right, throw them at me. What you got?
Well, here's what I was gonna say about 2005. What I remember about 2005, I was married, and but then I got better. Anyway, sorry, no. My experience with marriage is not the same as everybody else's. But I was bad at it. The kind of music we were listening to a lot was like very like black metal, like that type of thing.
So you missed a lot of the charts.
Yeah, you wouldn't associate with me with a lot of that, like, death metal, black metal, stuff like that. But
yeah.
That was my time.
Nice. Yeah, everyone has the death metal phase. I feel like
I think so.
And it's important that everyone goes through the death metal phase.
So I'm going to say Dimmu Borgir's not up there.
Dimmu Borgir was actually number 2.
Right after Gorgoroth and
Cradle of Filth was hanging around the charts there too. Shadows Fall. Yeah, no. Unfortunately, no. So here were the top 10. I'll just give them to you here, and we'll talk about number 1 because he's kind of the interesting one. Okay, go with your ideas. Yeah.
Would Diddy be one of them?
Puff Daddy is not, but a man who has been advocating for Puff Daddy's causes is. So you have that.
Oh, I don't know who that was.
Well, you're about to find out. So number 10 and 9 and 8 don't really matter, but you have David Banner, Kelly Clarkson, and Chris Brown before he decided to beat up Rihanna. Number 7 was Young Jeezy and Akon with a song that I have never heard of before called Soul Survivor. Don't know anything about that. Number 6 is Green Day's maybe worst song, Wake Me Up When September Ends.
Oh, God, I hate that song.
I do not like that song either. Speaking of songs I don't like, we have number 5 with Like You by Bow Wow and Sierra. Number 4 is My Humps by Black Eyed Peas.
Okay, I know that one.
There's one. Number 3 was Shake It Off by Mariah Carey.
All right, nope.
Yeah,
no clue.
Yeah. Number 2 was Photograph by Nickelback. There's a Canadian mom rock for you. And the number one song in the country when Left Behind 3 came out was Gold Digger by Kanye West, a self-proclaimed Nazi who is all over social media this weekend, getting into all kinds of just letting everybody have it, telling everybody all kinds of things.
God.
It's been an interesting thing to keep up with on Reddit.
Yeah.
But this movie, the plot of this movie is something you cannot keep up with on Reddit because I don't think anyone's talking about it, and that rightfully so.
Correct.
So let's get into the plot of Left Behind 3, and then we'll end our Left Behind series next week as we talk about both of the Left Behind remakes, the Nick Cage movie and the Kevin Sorbo movie at the same time next week. So that'll be a fun little cap off to our march of Christian films.
It'll be a good juxtaposition,
It will be. And Kevin Sorbo is the director of that movie as well. So a lot of his vision will go into that. So we'll see what Hercules has to say for himself some 20 years later. So this movie is automatically the best in the series because it starts with everything on fire and
And
Did you notice the big
I
improvement?
I did. I was
The font
specifically
style has
looking
been
for it.
changed.
It
Finally,
is so
the font
generic and
style has been.
beautiful.
It is perfectly fine. Don't fuck with it. It looks
Don't.
okay. But don't have to do anything weird with the font style. Yeah,
I
font
I
style is
immediately saw
normal.
that.
I immediately wrote 10 out of 10, best movie of the series.
Yeah.
Right, there you
Yep.
go. Done. Turn it
100%.
off.
It
Don't need
it was
anything else.
already a massive improvement.
It's a masterpiece in Christian cinematography, just because of the fucking font style chosen. Oh, Lord have mercy. So the movie starts with the president making a selfie of himself, and unfortunately, this is not him railroading coke and dick deep at a sex worker. Instead,
mean,
it's just him
which is how I
recording his
want my
thoughts.
president.
That's how, my president is black,
Yeah.
my Lambo's blue, and I'll be goddamned if my rims ain't too. There's some classic 2000s rap for you. And I kind of like how this movie starts. Like, it kind of has a
Yeah.
little bit of Last Man on Earth vibes, but like he's the
Yes.
president, and
Yeah.
he's a decent actor. Like, Louis Gossett Jr. is decent enough that he can pull this off, and he does
think so.
well in this. He's the best
Yeah.
actor by a fucking country mile, and you
Oh,
can
yeah,
tell that
big
the
time.
director knows that, because the movie is primarily him. Like,
Yep.
obviously Kirk Cameron and the Tribulation play a role in it,
Yeah,
but
they're tripping.
yeah, they're tripping. But
See,
their
I knew I
role
had to get in there.
their role is definitely minimized when compared to the second
Oh,
movie,
yeah.
right?
Correctly.
You can tell that yeah, they got a lot left on the editing floor there. So yeah, I like how the movie starts. I really do like how the movie starts.
Yes.
Then immediately I dislike the next 12 minutes, because
Oh,
we
God.
cut to a week earlier, and we are somewhere somebody is doing something, and
Yeah.
instead we know that it's restricted because we do a close-up for almost a solid minute of that.
Yep.
And we see like these like renegades of funk ninjas like running around and doing ninja shit, and they're sneaking
Yeah.
around something, and we find out what are they sneaking around. They're
Oh
stealing.
my God.
They're
The
stealing
way
fucking
that
Bibles.
the way they reveal that,
Oh God, it is such a fucking reveal.
I genuinely out loud was like, "What?"
I had to pause it. I had to pause this movie twice within the first 5-6 minutes of it. Once when it's the Bible reveal, and then
Yeah.
shortly thereafter with what happens next. Because what happens next tops the Bible reveal. Oh God, because these renegades of funk, these ninjas of Christ, they are not Marines, because they leave
No.
a soldier behind. A wounded soldier. And who is that wounded soldier? It's fucking Chris from the second
It's
movie.
poor
Fucking
Chris.
Chris.
The
Poor
one I
Chris.
liked.
Yeah, Chris was like the only nice guy in the second movie. He was the only
Yeah.
like level-headed man who was like, "Yeah, I've realized that I found God and it's fine." Like, he was okay with it. I
Yeah.
liked Chris. Oh
Honestly.
God, and what do they do to Chris? They pull a gun on Chris and they're like, "Who do you work for?" And he doesn't want to talk. And they ask him
Yeah, he's
again,
like,
"Who do you work for?"
Almighty
Says,
God.
"Almighty God." And then they kill him. And that's where I had to pause it and immediately audibly screamed out loud, "What in the fuck is going on in this movie?" Like,
It
we
was
are
around
minutes
that
in,
time.
and immediately this is way better than the other movies.
Oh,
And like this
yeah.
weird like Christian action movie. Like,
I
what,
think
what is
dealing
happening?
like after that happened, I think it was maybe a few more scenes I finally had to stop and look at the director because I was like, there is no way this is the same person
It's not at all. And you can
at
tell.
all.
It's a
And it was
weird,
like,
wild movie. This is wild. Of all three of them, the first one is boring as sin. The
oh
second
God, yeah.
one is just horribly paced and just needlessly plotted.
It actually the
Of the
second one
three of
pissed
them,
me off.
the second one is the second one is awful. It is the Hobbit 2 of movies.
Oh, yeah.
This one is the best of them. Like, it
Honestly,
actually is pretty decent, honestly. Like,
I
as
think I
far
would
as like your
recommend this one.
evangelical post-apocalyptic movies, it's the best of the bunch. I don't know how many of them there are, but
Of
so
the
far,
three, I would actually recommend this one
Mhm.
to enjoy because
well,
it's
how does it
stuff's
stand up
happening.
against Omega Code 2, though? And Casper Van
Oh,
Dien, the other
oh,
Christian movie we watched.
honestly, I don't think it touches Omega Code.
We've watched a lot of Christian movies until recently.
Yeah, we really have.
For two non-Christians, we're talking a lot
Yeah,
about the
really.
Christ. We're kind of stomping in on Diamanda Hagen's territory there. So
Wow.
there's a deep cut for you.
Yeah, really, that is.
The president. We cut to the next thing. This movie cuts a lot. Like there's a lot of
Mm,
just like it just goes to something else happening somewhere else. And
yes.
so you're gonna
So
hear
we
us
do
say that
keep
a lot.
that.
And at a certain point, I just stopped taking notes, and I was like, I wrote down literally, this movie cuts too much to write down every single thing that happens because it jumps back and forth a lot.
Absolutely, it does.
So we jump to the president out shooting for sport, which is amazing use of taxpayers' money
can I
during this
just say-
post-apocalyptic scenario. Yeah.
That transition, I think that was actually the move that made me look up the director, because
Yeah.
because
It's a
it went
subtle
from
little thing.
shooting Chris in the face
Yeah.
to immediately cutting to an exploding clay pigeon.
Yeah.
That was actually awesome.
There you go. Yeah.
And I was like, that's not what I expected from this Christian
Yeah.
movie.
Yeah.
Like,
That's true. You don't expect the things you don't expect. Also, is that we meet our vice president, the J.D. Vance
Yeah.
of our movie. And
are you sure you wouldn't be the Dick Cheney? He's holding a
Well,
shotgun.
yeah, speaking of J.D. Vance, I don't know about Dick Cheney, but I found out an interesting fact about J.D. Vance. Would you like to hear it?
Maybe.
Well, I'm going to tell you anyway.
Yeah.
I can't confirm or deny this. These are just reports floating around the internet. So use your own critical thinking skills. But rumor has it that J.D. Vance was voted most. Can't even repeat it. See, I had this whole setup. It was going to be a whole big joke. I'll have to cut all this now. But anyway, see if I can get back to it without laughing again. So yeah, J.D. Vance in his high school yearbook was actually voted most likely to fuck an Ottoman.
Beautiful job, sir.
I kind of butchered the end there, but yeah,
No, but it was
I wrote my joke. That's a joke I actually wrote down when I was watching
I
this
like it.
movie. I don't know why that thought came to me, but I literally turned to my wife and said, "J.D. Vance was voted in his high school yearbook most likely to fuck an Ottoman," and she just started giggling, and I was like, "Well, if I made my wife giggle, I got something out of it."
Yeah, there you go.
Oh God. So unfortunately, J.D. Vance is not long for this world, because shortly after appearing, he kind of implies that he knows more about what's going on with Nikolai and all of the things that are happening, and then immediately gets into a car and gets blown the fuck up, right? So
Just immediately.
pretty much there you go. Rock flag eagle,
And
buddy. Rock flag
and-
eagle.
But it's also because he just wouldn't get out of the vehicle whenever the president was telling him to.
No. He doesn't need to. God damn it.
No.
Yeah, he doesn't need to. Holy shit. Yeah. So the whole fucking
So we
thing
get that
blows up.
CGI explosion.
And this is also where we get the militia group that shows up, which is a new group that is
Yeah.
different than the Tribulation Force. They also
Mhm.
disagree with Nikolai, but for completely secular reasons that have nothing to do with him being the Antichrist, and have everything to do with him basically planning to destroy the world and bring upon World War III for the fuck of it. They don't really ever explain why he wants to do these things, other than, well, he's the Antichrist, and that's what the book says he's going to do. So he's going to do it. Yeah, that's pretty much
it's in his script, so he has to do it.
Yeah, and then after all of this, we finally cut to the actual quote-unquote heroes of this movie, our Tribulation Force, where we immediately meet our new Bruce, and we get
right away. I was just like, well, who the hell is this?
Who the fuck are you? Yeah, he's not the original Bruce, but here, changing characters. And God, this scene goes on forever. We get the entire wedding, a dual wedding. Buck and Chloe are getting married, and Ray is also getting married. And we see them recite vows. We see all four of them recite vows. And this goes on for fucking ever.
Oh. The dynamic between these people is so annoying.
Yeah, and it kills the pace of the movie. Like, so far, we've got like a weird Christian theological action movie where the
Mhm.
president of the United States is in a duel of fates with the fucking Antichrist. And
Yeah.
we go from that to the fucking boring ass Mighty Ducks doing fuck all of nothing as they get married and recite prayers to each other about how much they love. And we see all of it. And it
Oh
immediately
yeah.
kills the movie cold. Like the
Oh,
movie is
absolutely.
working on something kind of nice. And then this happens. It goes from kind of
Oh yeah.
campy fun to, oh
Just
God.
slam the
Can we
brakes.
I started fast forwarding it. I just like I don't give a
Yeah.
fuck. And then I got to Ray getting married and I immediately had the same thought you did, which is like, who the fuck is Ray marrying? Like
Yeah.
with the last time we were here, Ray was flying. He's still a pilot for Nikolai, so that hasn't changed in the last year.
Yeah.
But somehow we met a woman that was apparently in the other movies. I looked that up. She is in Left Behind 1
Oh,
and 2,
really?
but I have no idea where. Like she's fucking
No.
Waldo. You look around for her trying to figure out how she shows up in any capacity. His
Yeah,
ex
because
also shows up in the movie. Like that would have made sense. I thought like
yeah,
originally that's who I thought she was. I was like, oh, it's his. He got back with the ex for that he was having an affair with his wife that he was trying to convert
yeah,
to being a Christian. I guess that happened off screen. Like I'll accept that. Nope, she's a
right.
different person, completely
Totally
different
different
person,
person.
and not
Start,
introduced like. There's never like, Ray doesn't say like, Amanda, when I met you 3 months ago, my life changed. Nothing like that. It's just like she's been here.
in
Y'all just
in
gonna have
fact,
to
yeah.
accept it.
She even starts talking about him from the beginning. Like talking
Yes.
about her relationship with him from the beginning. Like when we first started this thing, when the people first disappeared and all that. I was like, where was she? I didn't see her in
Yes.
the first movie at all, specifically.
I did not either. I did not.
No.
Yeah, yeah. That and this, like I said, this completely kills the pace of the movie Dead Cold.
Oh,
And especially in
yes.
this movie, because this movie really has two different movies going on. There's the
Yeah.
Tribulation Force and them dealing with the sickness that they're battling with, which is its
Oh yeah.
own stupid fucking plot point.
Oh
And
god,
then
made me
there's the
sick.
president and the militia and what they're doing with Nikolai, which is kind of like its own like weird James Bondy low budget action movie kind of thing.
Which I
And then at
liked
some
that part.
yeah, and at some point these plots crisscross with Kirk Cameron kind of crossing over into both movies at different times. But other than
Basically.
that, nobody else really interacts within these two universes together. Well, at the very, very end, Kirk talks to Miller and says, "We need to talk," and then the movie ends. That's it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, none of the other characters interact with one another. Like it is completely two different movies happening with Kirk Cameron being the star or a star in both of them for some reason.
Yeah. It's
Anyway, beside the point, or maybe the whole point, who knows?
maybe.
Nikolai is still employing Ray somehow. For the last year, he has still employed him. And he is also, we find out that he is doing something with like a Bible delivery service that has led directly to Chris's death that Bruce is kind of responsible for. Right.
Yeah.
And so Buck, in the middle of this meeting and shortly after getting married, while they're talking about honeymoon plans, Buck
Yeah.
gets a pager because that was a thing we were still doing in 2005.
Yeah.
He got
Really.
he got a page beep, a beep beep from his beeper that tells him that the vice president is dead, and he says, "I need to go to Washington." So fuck the honeymoon. But before
Yeah.
he can go, we need to have our second prayer of the movie.
Oh.
There will be more of them. And we
Yeah.
don't get just a scene of them starting to pray and then we fade to black and we show up in
No.
Washington. No, 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 no. No. We get the whole prayer. All of it.
Oh.
All glorious few minutes of it. And thus ends our little interjection with the Tribulation Force. And we go back to a more interesting part of the movie, honestly.
Yeah.
So that's basically how the movie sets up. It cuts back and forth
Yeah.
between the president and the militia and Tribulation Force and Kirk Cameron, and that's kind of where the two worlds exist.
Yeah, and I
Honestly,
guess so a big issue in the second movie with their budding relationship is Kirk Cameron and I don't remember. Chloe? Is that
Chloe,
it?
yes, yes,
Okay.
yes,
Is that she didn't appreciate how he was always leaving, like
yes,
constantly.
and he proceeds to
Didn't
leave more.
Yeah, immediately. Didn't seem to
Yes,
bother her that much. In fact, what's
it's
more of a
God's will.
bother,
It's God's
oh,
will.
yeah, basically, yeah.
It's God's will. That's what
What's
God
I
wants.
guess she's kind of okay, it seems like, with him
Yeah,
leaving because she's out doing, commando shit and like
Yeah,
stealing Bibles,
she's still in
getting
Bibles.
Chris killed.
Getting Chris killed.
Like,
Yeah. So that's the other thing. The ninja group that we find out from before, yeah, that's apparently the tribulation force. So not only are they Christians who have their own little Bible club, and now they also have a church session that they do, and they're all
and
intermarried. They're
yeah,
also ninjas at night, stealing books and delivering them to people.
uh,
Yeah, layers and layers and layers happening here. I'm sure we're missed a whole bunch. Speaking of missing a whole
seriously,
bunch, we skip forward in the plot a little bit, and
yeah,
the president meets the literal Antichrist, which is where the most of this movie should kind of find its place, because this is the best
yeah,
part of the movie, really.
oh yeah,
And Nikolai reveals an evil serum that he just happens to show to the president
yeah.
in the most casually backwards ass stupid villain way possible. It's very silly.
We
And this
lean
is
more into the magic side of this movie.
yes,
Like,
yes, yeah. And that becomes a big deal later on, because at a certain
yes,
point you realize both of these characters, the president and the Antichrist, Nikolai, they both have magical powers, don't you know?
yeah, they're wizards,
The
man.
president, basically, I literally wrote that down. We haven't even got here, but I literally wrote down you could replace the Christian theology of this movie and make them all wizards, and the movie would still work. Like, just
Absolutely.
make them all wizards, and it works. It would work. It would be like a real shitty, low budget Star Wars without really a lot of special effects, but it
It'd
would
be
still
like
work.
what's that one movie? Warlock? It'd be like that.
Yeah. I thought you were gonna say Warriors of Virtue, that kangaroo movie. But
I
that's just
mean,
because I like to talk about that movie, whatever, given
I was about to say, I
possibility.
think you're really projecting something onto me here, sir.
Is that bushwhacked I hear you talking about? You want to talk about the Daniel Stern comedy Bushwhacked?
So,
A fantastic
honestly,
film,
someday, yes.
possibly tangentially related to the Home Alone series. Now, anyway, we get back to this movie, and the next thing we see is Buck getting kidnapped, and this is where he gets
Oh,
interrogated by the president, who
yeah.
asks him a lot of questions, and
This, I
oh
like
god,
this.
this is another part where I had to pause it and be like, what the fuck is happening in this movie?
See, that part, I was, it was very confusing, but I kind of like how you don't know where the president stands right away.
Yes, yeah, you don't know if the president is with Nikolai, because he's kind of helping him, but he's doing
Yeah.
it. But he also has been getting information that maybe things are not necessarily on the up and up with Nikolai,
And then, of course, with
but he
Nikolai
doesn't really
showing
believe
his,
that information.
yeah, showing his ability to like turn water into green jello.
Yeah. He's kind of getting a little suspicious, right? So
Yeah.
he has some ideas that something is going on, but he's interrogating Buck, and he wants to know more information from Buck. And
Is
what does Buck turn to? What information does Buck have? It's in his fucking Bible.
it's in the Bible. It's right there. It's in,
It's in
I
the
don't
book of
remember what.
Revelation, or
Was
Daniel.
it
I
in
forget. I don't know
I
if he
can't
gives him
remember.
Daniel or the Revelations. He cites the Bible and says, "Look, it's here in the book, and this is what's happening. Nikolai is the Antichrist. You can't kill him." Right. And that, yeah. And once again, had to pause the movie, cold stop, and just was like, what the fuck is going on in this movie? So the president is trying to defeat the Antichrist, and he's going to use the power of the Bible.
Yeah.
Okay, this is where we're going. Alrighty.
Well, and I think they try to ease that whole like
Hmm.
holy warrior thing in. Like they did that in the last one, I think, with
Yeah.
somebody, but
They tried several
I think
times.
well no, it was I guess it was the first one where they eased Kirk Cameron into it.
Yes,
Um
yeah.
we kind of get that same journey with the president,
Yeah, and he does a
but
much better job, I will say.
I think so.
Yeah. So this is also where we kind of learn more about the character of Miss Miller, who is Nikolai's assistant. And
Yeah.
Nikolai, in spite of being a genius, is apparently fucking terrible at hiring people, because everyone that works for him is fucking turning on him. Everybody. Ray's
Yeah.
against him. Buck is against him. The president's against him. All these other presidents of different countries that we find out later are part of the militia. Like, half the people that work for him fucking hate him. He is apparently not very good at checking sources and references before
Yeah,
hiring people.
really.
Doesn't really follow
And
through on those background checks.
and is that a thing? Are like I don't know if I got that from the Bible that people were going to be, against the Antichrist. Like kind of thought he led the charge on all this stuff. Like it was his machinations, not people going
Yeah.
against him.
Who the hell knows, man?
Yeah,
This movie
really.
goes in a lot of different ways. A
Yeah.
lot of different ways. So
Yeah.
this is also where we meet Ray's ex, who's still working for Nikolai, who she isn't. We learn later casually seeing, but they have an open relationship.
Yeah, that was like, oh, come on.
Yeah, yeah.
Like
So
we're just taking another
she,
dig at like
her,
they're
and
morally wrong people.
yeah,
Like
well, morally wrong little deviants. So
yeah.
her and Ray's current wife meet, and they kind of have a little squabble, a little drama going on. And
It's
later on,
can,
she throws herself at Ray
can I tell
after,
you
and
that
then
was
threatens him to
so out
turn
of
him in.
character?
Yeah, it was very bizarre. It was a weird turn of things that happened. For I think they just needed to give her something to do, because she
I
doesn't really
guess
show up
so.
again after that. Like,
No.
she kind of just goes
It's
away.
it's
You know?
so weird. I just remember thinking that like when did this start? Like she didn't
Yeah.
like I think she kind of was all up Nikolai's ass the first two movies. Like,
Basically.
yeah. I mean, it was just such a left turn and it made no sense for her character.
Yeah. So the next big thing that happens is in this Christian spy movie involving the president. The president and Miss Miller, they go investigate this facility that they have intel and believe that anthrax is being made at, and they're trying to figure out what exactly is being poisoned. And what do they find is being
Mhm.
poisoned?
Fuck.
It's the fucking Bibles.
I can't even say it.
It's the fucking Bibles. The Bibles are
That's
being
the holy
poisoned.
fucking Bible,
The
sir.
holy fucking Bible, sir. Yeah, the Bibles are being poisoned, and that is how people are getting sick. So when the tribulation force is stealing the Bibles and spreading them to everybody,
Uh,
they are
I
inadvertently spreading the sickness, so to
can I
speak.
can I tell you? I think only a fundy like you know persecution complex mind could come up with
Hmm.
this idea of like contaminating Bibles with viruses. Like that's not who comes up with that? Like you can't. They're gonna be like, see, we are oppressed. Like, okay,
It's yeah, yeah, yeah. Somehow the president and Miller survive finding out this information, even though like it's like a low budget action movie, like it's a spy
that part
thriller
was
here.
it was still that
They
was
get
cool.
shit gets blown up, they fall out of buildings.
He
Somehow they
knocks
live.
like he wrestles with a guard down the stairs.
He
That was
does wrestle a
cool.
guard down the stairs, the president, and you hear like a bone crack, and you're like, oh, is he dead? No, he's fine. The president fucking can
Oh,
wrestle
that
a bitch down the
again,
stairs.
very cool move, very cool thematically, I guess, like or
Hmm.
visually,
Yeah.
cinematographically, whatever.
Yeah, it was a
Looked
cool
good.
shot. It was a cool shot. Yeah, it's cool. It looked cool. You could tell like is a much better director than the second one and the first one for that matter.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
so Miller and the president are both kind of accepting the fact, well, the president more so, that they've been misled by
Well,
Nikolai,
yeah.
asking
Well,
themselves the question that all Trump
this
supporters should be asking, which is how could I have been so misled by this man? But continue,
oh,
go ahead.
if only. Well, and then it's Miller. She brings him in to this like whole like
Militia
international
organization. Yeah, it's
yeah
like a
like with all
whole
these other world
international corporation
with
that
other
involves several different
presidents.
presidents and
It's like,
yeah, yeah,
did
yeah.
they get brought in by some assistant or something? Like,
They all had to
or
get
were
jumped
they?
in. It's like that
I
jump rope
mean,
scene.
I wonder
They had to do
or
double dutch.
either that or they organized it and they were like, I don't know about this American president, which now makes total sense for other countries to be very kind of standoffish about American presidents.
Yeah,
Full on agree.
it's true.
Like, who'd have thought this movie would get it right?
Yeah,
But
yeah.
you know,
And then
um,
we cut like mid sentence, literally mid
yeah,
sentence. We cut to Ray on an airplane getting hit on by his ex wife, or not his ex wife,
uh,
his ex lover. And this is where she tells him like, "I know your wife is a Christian, and I know you have a Bible, and I'm choosing not to tell Nikolai Yeah. So she basically tells him like, unless you fuck me, I'm gonna
Yeah,
tell Nikolai about what's going on. Ray
just out of
is not
nowhere.
interested in fucking her. Yeah,
That's
this
right.
is kind of like a weird thing that she does, right? She
Yeah,
hasn't really thrown herself at him since the first movie at the very beginning.
and
Whenever
even
everyone
then,
dies, yeah, he kind of shuts her down,
she's
and she's not this over the top about it. It's very much like,
no, it's
hey,
very much like
we had a thing
yes.
going.
She was
Everyone
like a
I know is dead. Could I
yeah,
stay here? And he's just like, no, get away from me,
mhm,
woman I used to bang.
yeah, right.
Like,
Like wow, turned away from
very,
her.
yeah, very up his own
So
ass with that.
yeah, it
Yeah,
was. Oh man. So
and then
yeah,
we,
I just feel like this was just an unfair treatment of this character, sort
yeah,
of.
yeah. We're talking about unfair character. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
It is unfair. Speaking of unfair, we cut to Bruce and we find out that Bruce is unfortunately very sick. So sick that
oh,
he's dying in his dreams. And
his
yeah.
hallucinations.
Uh-huh.
I struggled to understand this. I didn't want to back it up and understand it,
No,
so
that's fair.
I didn't do that. But was when he was having this vision of Nikolai talking to him, like with the mask on or whatever, and he was just
Mhm.
speaking in, I assume, his natural accent. Um, was he implying that they were friends before?
That's kind of what I thought, but
Yeah,
I don't know how that
I
would have ever
was.
been brought up because they don't ever
Yeah,
talk about Bruce meeting Nikolai before in the first movie. He seems to know a lot about him, like that he's hiring and all these different things that he's doing, but no, I don't
yeah,
remember them ever mentioning that they were friends or anything like that.
yeah. It's just all of a
So if they
sudden
did,
him like
I missed that part.
yeah, like Nikolai just starts talking about. I don't know. He says something about like knowing each other or something like that. I was like,
Mm.
"What?" But it was an hallucination. I don't know if that means anything.
Yeah,
I don't know.
yeah.
I didn't care enough to back it up and try
That's
to
fair.
understand it.
Yeah. So Bruce is very, very sick, and we learn this by seeing his hallucinations, and then we double
Yeah.
down on this a few seconds later because Ray and his new wife show up to tell Buck that Bruce is sick, and that they're very upset that he is letting Chloe stay, and
Yeah.
he's not with her. But Buck politely explains to them to go fuck themselves. No, he
Yeah.
tells them that God's will has told him he needs to be here in DC and not
Well,
in
it
Chicago with
was
his new wife.
well, because and then that's done in a weird way.
Yeah, they pray over it.
They pray over it, and he ends up getting a message through a vision of Bruce.
Yeah, our fourth prayer of the movie. The whole thing,
Oh
once again,
God, yeah.
all of it.
And
The whole
but
prayer.
in the first movie, I think they handled prayer in a more, I'm gonna just say, realistic way.
Mm-hmm.
Where we don't see there is no vision. Okay, I did church for a long time. I did prayer a lot.
Yeah.
I never hallucinated. If I did, I think I'd have freaked out. I wouldn't have been like, "Oh, okay, well, this is happening now." I think I'd be freaking out. But no, I never had a vision. Never, it was just it's exactly how it happened in the first movie. You
Yeah.
pray, you may feel different, but it just keeps going. The world just keeps turning. Like there are no hallucinations. You don't get Bible verses yelled at you. I mean,
Well,
it's,
you and
but
I
he
went to two
did.
different churches. No, I'm just playing. No, my experience
The
with
Church of the Holy Hallucination.
my experience with church as a kid was similar. Like it was a place. Depending on the church, I went to between three different churches. We didn't go very
Same.
often. Like I said, my dad was more interested in the Dallas Cowboys. The Church of Jerry Jones was always number
Yep.
one. But the churches we went to, everyone involved was always they were mostly Southern Baptist. We went to one Catholic church whenever my parents were kind of doing that for a little bit, but
Yeah.
that one was a little different. Never went to Catholic school or anything like that.
No.
So I didn't have to worry about that side of it. But we went
Yeah.
there for a
Your
couple of
knuckles
months.
came out unscathed.
Knuckles fine. Learned a little Latin. That was pretty much it. And then
Good.
we went to a lot of Southern Baptist churches, and all of them
Yeah.
were fine. My grandparents worked in the church that we went to, so
Oh, okay.
they were kind of very well known in the church. So everyone like
Yeah.
that. My dad went to church every single week growing up as a kid. So
Yeah.
everyone at the church already knew him. So it was kind of like one of those things where it was kind of like we were welcomed with open arms and never
Yeah.
treated as outsiders. And even then, I always had some difficulties with it, but I think that was just a little bit of ADHD and not sitting still and not being medicated and being asked to
Yep.
sit still while everyone was singing and talking about a book that I was, for some reason, not allowed to read while they were reading it. Every time I tried to read the Bible while we were reading the Bible in church, they would hit my hand and be like, pay attention to what the pastor's saying. I'm like,
Uh-huh.
I fucking am. I'm reading the goddamn book that we're reading. Like, what do you want
Yeah.
me to do? Like, I'm just supposed to listen to what he says about it? I can't check my fucking sources? Like, he's saying it
You're
says
not.
this. I'm not seeing that. Where the, like, no. Anyway,
Yep. Right.
story
Exactly.
for a different day. Let's
Oh
get back
yeah.
to the movie because we find out some key information soon.
Yeah.
Bruce finds out that the Bibles he's been given out are poisoned, and of course he feels gosh darn bad about this. And this is where the acting of the movie really kind of lets the movie down because this could have
Yeah.
been like a very dramatic scene, and instead, the character playing Bruce, like we said at the beginning of this, really is not very good. And
No.
so this comes across a little bit more silly and cringy than anything coming across like an Oscar scene, so to speak.
Yeah. I think the previous Bruce actor could have handled it, but
Yeah.
he's got more chops. He's worked with Chuck Norris. I don't know if that means anything, but
Yes.
um, you know, at least I liked him in Walker, Texas Ranger the few times I watched it when I was younger.
Yeah.
Mm. Wears a cowboy hat well. Anyway,
He does wear a
um,
cowboy hat well.
yeah,
Can do that. Say that for him.
but no, this actor does not bring the gravitas.
He does not. Speaking of not bringing the gravitas, the character of Haiti, Ray's ex, we find
Oh yeah,
out that
yeah,
she is pregnant with the Antichrist baby.
yeah. 3 months now.
3 months now, and this is a plot point that will come up how many times after this?
None.
Never again. There you go. Ding, ding, ding. That's
Oh
the correct
man.
answer. So, yeah, I guess if she's Nikolai's girlfriend and she's pregnant, she's like the Grimes of this movie. So, does she also make kind of shitty, pretentious movie that only rich people like? You know?
Can I offer, and this is going to be very singular and probably, well, it's already, I know it's wrong because it's not,
Mm-hmm.
none of this is true, but none of this is real. But if there were an Antichrist,
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we would have lay any claim to any of them in this country. I
Yeah.
think there's one candidate that might be gathering enough of a, I don't know, like people starting to really like this guy
Yeah. A
over
following
in
that's.
Europe. The people that
Oh,
are
okay.
really
I thought you were
digging.
gonna say Kamala fucking Harris. No.
Yeah, no, people really like her. No, one person who's really like, especially like in the European world, who's gathering a lot of like support and kind of just seems like a good guy, Zelensky.
Yeah,
Honestly, if I
yeah,
could
yeah.
see
Zelensky.
anybody kind of coming up as an Antichrist figure, I mean, he's a good guy. He's got the charisma. He's getting the backing of the UN.
Hot
He's
take, hot take, hot take, hot take
it's
in there.
it's it's
So I
it's
guess if Zelensky starts declaring a world currency, then we should get worried, right?
if the UN starts propping him up, then we know. But
Yeah.
again, I will say I don't believe any of this. So
No, I mean it'd be too convenient if there was like a whole like game plan ahead of time that we could just read ahead on and be like, oh, so this is what happens next. All right.
no, I
Put
mean a lot
put
of it's
my money in.
self-fulfilling.
Yeah, exactly, right. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, we're gonna
A lot of people are invested in it. They got stake in it, literal stake. Some of them,
It's true. It's true. So this
like
movie, this is where I wrote down. This movie cuts too fucking much for me to keep track of every single
yeah.
plot development because we jump back and forth a lot.
Oh
So
yeah.
I tried to keep up with all the cuts and jumps. At this point, I
Uh,
stopped and I just generally summarized because there was way too much cutting.
oh yeah.
But
No,
the
I've
next
definitely
big
started losing.
yeah, the next big plot development of note is that the president and Nikolai are in this battle of wits, right? They're going back and forth, kind of playing each other, right? You win some, I win some. At the end of the day, there's respect and a porcelain gun, because the president decides he's going to kill Nikolai with his own goddamn fucking hands.
That was
and
awesome.
A gun.
Yeah. Well, it was. I mean, I've got my porcelain gun.
Yeah,
and
this is
goes in.
and he points it right at the screen too, and this is where I wrote down the Jay-Z song, Young Jeezy song, whoever the fuck sang it, I don't remember anymore. But the president is black, my Lambo is blue, and I'll be goddamned if my rims ain't too, because yeah, the president, he's it's hard to hate him in this movie. He kind of makes the movie not hateable. Of all the
Yeah.
Left Behind movies, the third one is definitely the one you should watch. The other two are
Oh, yeah.
kind of just boring and don't need to
Oh, yeah.
exist in comparison to
No.
this movie.
Unfortunately, you kind of have to build up to this one, sort of. Well, I don't know. Do you?
I don't think you do. I don't think you do.
Yeah.
Anyway,
it really, it doesn't seem all
so
that
say
important.
you could really get rid of a lot of this shit. Like, we do not need a lot of this stuff. But at the end of the day, they wanted to make a Christian movie with a message, not a evangelical action movie where the president tries to kill the Antichrist.
Yeah.
That's the movie I wanted them to make.
Has the president at this point, has he done his prayer and like wanted God to reveal or something?
No. That happens in here in a little bit. So the president's plan does not go well.
Confusing.
Yeah, so the president's plan does not go very well. So he goes into the White House or he goes into the United Nations or wherever the fuck they are, some
Wherever they
nameless
are.
office building somewhere.
Yeah.
And he goes in with the intent of shooting Nikolai with the porcelain gun.
He's got the porcelain gun, and he also has a tracking.
He's got like a little
beacon
tracking
thing?
beacon. Yeah.
For
But
a
Nikolai
missile.
is already prepared for all this. So Nikolai knows that this is going to happen. And so instead,
The
this
one
is when
time he knows something about the person in the room with him.
apparently he knows everything all the time. This movie uses Nikolai as like a Final Fantasy villain, which is anything that went against him, he already knew that was going to happen and had prepared for it and just let it happen anyway. Right, which I fucking hate when that happens in any video game.
Oh, absolutely.
Immediately takes me out of it when someone's like, "Well, I knew all along, and I let you do it." I'm like, "No, that's stupid.
No, yep,
that's dumb." So instead, he turns on the TV and shows the president that we basically are starting World War III because the prophecy has come true. The militia has been warned that he's going to strike America with some kind of bomb. The other nations have known this for a while. The president didn't want to believe it until literally it was happening. And now it's happening. World War III is here.
Well, and they're on the news channels, the news stations. They're saying World War III started.
World War III started. Chicago and New York and Washington, D.C. are almost completely fucked, right?
Well,
but
here's where
what is Buck doing during all of this? Did you keep track of what? Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, the when they were in the news things or whatever saying, I actually said out loud, like, what's happening? Like, in what world would the news be like, it's World War III?
Not only that,
brought to you by, I don't know.
Yeah, so my biggest issue is, yes, the news is on, and that's a problem. But bigger problem is the internet is still working.
Oh, yeah.
Buck is still on the internet, which, fun fact, if there ever is a World War III, the internet, probably the first fucking thing to go if anyone is going to try to do anything to us. Like, they ain't going to let us talk to each other anymore. That's the first thing
that's
fucking
not
gone.
That's not safe. Well, yeah, you definitely want to break up that kind of communication.
Yeah.
And also, it's not safe for them for the communication being available like that.
Exactly. The least information we have, the better, the more advantageous it is. This goes for every system,
they can
regardless.
And they're going to want to reduce like cyber attacks, things like that.
So Buck has the internet working. The end of the world is happening. It's World War III. The rapture has already happened. Buck is like an older millennial sent back in time in 2005 with eyes wide open to the world and all the horrors that he has seen. So, shit, man.
Yeah,
if this was me in 2005 and the internet's working, my ass is on LimeWire and I am downloading like every Jenna Hayes and Faye Reagan porn video I can find and like every NoFX shitty mislabeled NoFX live song. Watching some Kasim G on YouTube, like just having a ball. It's 2005.
downloading GTA 2. I don't know if you ever did that on LimeWire.
You played some GTA 2, yeah.
Yep.
There's a deep cut for specifically my West Texas fans. Those of you that follow us from there, getting a pizza Patron for $3. That was fucking a thing you could do in 2005. Get a fucking large pizza for $3. God damn. Can't do that anymore.
No.
So this is where some things start to unfold, obviously, because we get to see Nikolai's master plan as he kind of does his whole villain speech. However,
Yep.
the president ain't no bitch, and he decides to
No.
shoot him with the porcelain gun. However,
2 in the chest.
2 in the chest, 1 in the head. Bullets go right through him, though, right?
Yeah.
Bullets go right through him, and this is
And
when
they
the
take out
president realizes he's fucking magical.
It kills the people behind him, which, by the way, that was
Kills the people
awesome.
behind him. Very funny, yes, yeah. It was some inadvertent comedy right there. And this is when I wrote down, like, this movie, you could literally remove all of the evangelical parts, make them wizards, still kind of works, right?
Oh, yeah.
Because now all of a sudden Nikolai is magical. Bullets have no effect on him. The president realizes he done fucked with the wrong dude because this guy's got magical powers, right?
And all of a sudden, he's got the transmitter thing in his hand, and it's like ashes now.
It's ashes, yeah. And then Nikolai makes him pull the gun to himself and does, the Clint Eastwood, is there one in the chamber? Do you know? Do you know?
That was
right.
That was cool too. That was like, that's
Then
pretty hard.
Changes his plans, throws the gun away, force chokes him like he's fucking Star Wars, and then throws him out of the window like he's Samuel L. Jackson from Star Wars 3.
Levitates him and throws him out the window.
Yeah, just throws him out the window. You would think this kills the president. No. Turns out the president also has magical powers.
He's a wizard too.
He's a wizard of a different school, but still a wizard.
Yeah. But then,
you're a wizard, Harry.
And I do like that Nikolai's like, well, that's not humanly possible. I'm like, I agree.
Yeah. Nikolai sees this happen and is like, he says it up to the clouds like he's talking to God. Like, and this is what I wrote down. I literally wrote in all caps, is the president fucking God? Like, is that what this movie wants me to believe? That the God has reincarnated himself as the president of the United States to battle the Antichrist? Because if so, I'm here for it, right?
Well, I was about to say, who else would you want to reincarnate as except Lou Gossett Jr.?
That would be an okay B movie. Like, if you told me the premise of a decent B movie was that the president of the United States is the reincarnation spirit of God and he's battling the Antichrist, I would be like, sign me the fuck up. That sounds like a fun time. Instead, this is not pitched in that way. We get a completely different pitch. So this is when we finally cut back to the other cast of the movie, which is Buck and the Tribulation Force. Completely forgot they were in this movie for a while. And Buck is just watching the world around him crumble and collapse. Yeah. He can't get to Chloe because she's in a different city.
Yeah.
He's also screaming at God and pissed off at everything.
Which makes sense. Why would, of all the things for God to tell someone to do, I mean, again, not that I buy all this, but...
Fuck your wife.
Yeah, just God said stay here in this room. Like,
it's like the test of Abraham, right? Except, let your wife die.
Yeah. And
hope she gets better.
But also as like a movie, as any kind of like visually interesting thing, we just leave him in the room? Like, that's not interesting at all. It's actually the opposite of interesting.
Oh, God. Yeah. Speaking interesting, the next interesting thing that happens is the president shows back up at the militia headquarters and he tells them all that he emptied a full clip into Nikolai. No effect. He tells them all that he fell out of the window and all the things that happened, and they don't believe him, obviously. They do not believe a word he's saying. Do not. In fact, Miss Miller wants to pull a fucking gun on him because she thinks he's been a traitor this whole time. Like, he must have been a traitor because Nikolai knew all of their moves before they did them, apparently.
Yeah. So, and there's only one way that could happen. And I think one of the presidents on the screen is saying that too.
Yeah. One of the presidents on the screen keeps repeating that. And we get like little blurbs of information about what's happening around the world at this, like, as we cut back and forth, right? As Buck is watching the news on the internet, we keep getting these things. God damn. Yeah. The internet is still working and the news is still broadcasting during literally World War III as 3 American cities are apparently getting nuked. And everything is okay. Speaking of A-OK, this is when Chloe calls Buck and they have their dramatic phone call conversation, and we get more of Kirk Cameron's horrible acting
Oh
as
yeah.
Chloe tells him that Bruce is about to die, and not
Yep.
only that, but she also has the sickness, and
And she's down with the sickness.
she's down with the sickness, and she starts to collapse, and then the phone call ends, and Buck is left
Oh,
angry at God
oh
once again.
yeah. And God shows his hand.
God always shows his hand, Travis, don't you know?
I did not know until now.
You're about to. Anyway, so Buck is asking God if what he's got to do to make God so fucking happy. And instead of driving to Chicago to be with his wife who's about to die or doing something to help the world, he instead gets into a little hissy fit and throws his phone, which then immediately calls somebody. Because
Yes, it
that's
does.
how cell phones work. And honestly, in
Yeah.
2005, that's probably what would have happened. Those things were fucking bricks back in the day, man.
Yeah.
Anyway, we cut back to the president who is now having flashbacks for the first time. We're introducing this to the movie where he
Yeah.
flashes back to the vice president and realizes, what happened in that moment and how there may have been some divinity there and piecing that together with what happened with Nikolai. And yeah, this is where I'm like, is the president fucking God? Is that what we're going to realize? Is that
Yeah,
he
it
is
was
a savior? Like, is that really where we're going? It's not quite where we go, but oh boy, we
not
get
quite.
close.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, Ray shows back up, and he and his wife they're gonna watch Bruce die as he gives last communion, and Chloe is
Yes.
also sitting there dying. So we circle back to the start of the movie
Oh
though
man.
now because now we get back to the beginning of the movie, which was the president filming that little selfie he started off with.
Yeah.
Now we come back to that, and this is when Buck shows up to the president's office and he tells him, I need to save you because you haven't accepted Christ into your life yet. And until you do that, you can't
I was,
defeat Nikolai.
I was about to say he's been doing pretty good without accepting. Like
He's he's been kind of keeping his wits about him, honestly, but apparently not well enough for
he's
Buck's liking. And what has
yeah. I
Buck
mean,
done
like
this whole time to help the world? Fuck
sit.
all of nothing.
Yeah. Sit in a
Anyway.
room.
God.
uh,
So Buck tells him the whole thing. He's decided he's going to save the president. So he gives him the whole speech. God became a man 2,000 years ago. He took the body of Jesus Christ. Full stop right there.
yep.
Why? Why would God want to become a person? Like, did.
Uh,
Oh, yeah.
y-
We could go into a whole conversation about how that's borrowing a lot of just other religions and other cultures, and how the
oh
Bible is
yeah.
largely borrowing from other religions and other cultures. And you know what? That's okay. It's okay. I
It's
just wish
okay.
Christians would say that more often. That
Or
a
at
lot
least
of,
learn
or at least learn about
anything.
it. That a lot of the faith that you believe in was a poor version of explaining the world around them using limited science and information that we have. And all we've
Yeah.
done is improve that version of explaining what the world is like around us because we have
Yeah.
more information now. That doesn't mean that whatever you believe in is null and void. It just means we've added to. It's a
Yeah.
new addition. It's not that, anyway, different
Yeah.
story for a different conversation.
Also, New
So,
Edition, great boy band. Anyway.
yeah, you go. Anyway, so I guess he has to accept God into his heart in order to be saved, in order to in
Oh
this
yeah.
movie. And I guess like fuck Moses and fuck everybody else from the Old Testament, they all just went to hell, which you
Hey,
know,
I mean, everyone born before Jesus is in hell.
technically, yeah,
Yeah.
everyone in the Old Testament went to hell, if you
Well,
want
I
to get
guess
specific about it.
they'd be in Sheol or whatever.
Yeah,
The
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, there's
because
also
hell
the
wasn't.
harrowing of the hell story, which was edited out of the Bible, where Jesus, during his time period of being dead, actually goes to hell and rescues the people
Ooh.
from the story from the Old Testament and brings them into heaven and kind of redeems them. But that
Yeah.
story has been left on the editing shelf of the most editions of the Bible. That's another
There,
conversation. There's a lot of different editions of the
there's
Bible.
there is.
There's also the story of Metatron that we could get into.
Yeah.
Conversations for days and days and days, and more interesting than this movie, which is thankfully nearly over
Oh yes.
because we get our Oscar scene, and this is the one you were talking about, where the president finally talks to God. And there's my Bright Eyes reference for the podcast. Yeah, the president talks to God and he accepts God into his life. And this gives him more powers, right? So he
Yeah.
levels up a little bit because now he's invisible.
That
You didn't see that coming, did you?
no.
Yeah,
There's so many
now the
things.
president is invisible. Also, at the same time, we find out from Chloe that Bruce is somehow still not dead, still talking and giving communion, but about
Yeah.
to die. But before he dies, what does he do? He blesses the wine. And what
He
is the
blesses the
antidote?
wine.
What is the antidote for the poisoned Bibles? The
Blessed
wine.
wine.
Blessed wine. Just get a little fucking tipsy, a little fucking, whew, little pina colada, right? A little wine cooler. Ain't nothing like a little Mad Dog 2020 to set off a little Christian film. Give me a little bit of that mango Mad Dog, baby. That was one of the first things I ever drank when I was like 15
Oh,
years old. Some
no.
fucking Boone's Farm and some Mad Dog 2020. That's the problem with Gen Zers, right? This is a completely different topic. This is just like me as an old bitter millennial, just being like, the problem with Gen Zers is they don't drink enough Boone's Farm. You
Yeah,
drink
see,
some Boone's Farm, you learn what life is about, you get disappointed,
nowadays,
and you learn to trust alcohol a little less.
yeah, really, nowadays you got things like White Claw or Twisted Tea or,
That's what the kids are
it's,
drinking. Like they were fucking drinking White Claw. I
yeah,
couldn't
they
afford
would,
White Claw. I could
no,
afford Boone's Farm.
we had
Boone's Farm
Boone's
was like
Farm.
$1. I
It
wonder how
was,
much Boone's Farm is now. Oh
I
god, next time I go
wonder.
to the store, I might look for some Boone's Farm or some fucking Mad Dog
Some
2020.
Bartles and
I went through
James.
a period where I used to love shitty alcohol. Like I used to fucking
No,
drink
no.
fucking tall boys of Mickey's. Oh god, dude, I used
Oh
to fucking
man.
chug them down. Yeah, when I was in college, I was a cheapskate. I was a mess. Any alcohol that was cheap, give it to me. I
Oh
don't
man.
care.
I
Fucking
my
Four
early
Locos,
days
all
of
that shit.
alcohol, since we're way off on a tangent here.
Yeah.
My early days of alcohol, I'm very shamefully called one of my Bud Light Lime days.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because I was like, oh, beer's gross. But
Bud Light Lime.
it's basically lime water.
Basically, yeah, basically.
It
It's lime flavored water that'll get you a little tipsy.
is. It will. So
Oh god. So we're almost to the end of the movie and so Bruce is dead. Chloe realizes that the wine will
it's
save her.
it's
The
it's
president is going to go talk to Nikolai. He shows up and his whole plan while talking to Nikolai is he's going to try to slow him down by blowing up his headquarters. That's the goal.
yeah.
He's going to do this by using that rocket explosion that he had the flashback from earlier in the movie.
Mhm.
And he's able to accomplish this feat, which he thinks is going to be difficult, but is apparently very easy because none of the guards know he's there because
Yeah.
through the power of Christ's love, he is invisible to the naked eye and he's able to just go on through them. Who is able to
uh,
see him though is Nikolai. And Nikolai
yeah.
is talking to the leaders of China and North Korea, Russia, a lot of different people. But he's talking to them, telling them about how he's about to basically finish killing everyone in America and that the plan is whatever the plan is, because we still don't really know why the
No.
fuck they're doing what the fuck they're doing. He's just because he's evil and he's the Antichrist, I guess. That's a reason
Yep.
enough.
Antichrist got Antichrist.
He's got an Antichrist. So he notices that the president is there and he's like, what are you doing here? And this is when we find out the president apparently has been pocketing his cell phone this whole motherfucking time.
Mhm.
And he's on the other line with Miller, who didn't believe him from before.
That's
Now
right.
she's starting to believe him because she's hearing Nikolai give his whole evil villain speech.
Yep.
Oh, Lord. And so
He
this is when the president and the Antichrist are having their little duel of fates. And what does the president do? He uses his little beeping machine to summon a
shows his
giant,
hand.
giant missile strike right into Nikolai's headquarters, which effectively, I guess, is supposed to blow them both up and kill them.
Yeah.
However, we find out later on that that's not exactly what happens.
No.
Anyway, Chloe calls Buck and tells him that the Mad Dog 2020 that they have, that's the secret to the poisoned Bibles,
that's
and that
that's all we needed.
that's all you
We
needed
don't
was a
need
little Mad
vaccines
Dog. Little
because they were
nothing like a little
stealing
red
vaccines.
wine. They were,
'Cause
yes.
yeah, so like they were hoarding all these vaccines, and I don't know if this is a
They were
commentary for
COVID
nowadays,
hoarders, yeah.
but they were getting ready for all this. None of them worked. What worked was wine. Drink some wine. You just
Hmm.
need some holy wine. Like it needs to be blessed. It needs to be the blood of Christ.
Uh-huh.
That's the only thing that will
That's
save
all
you.
you need.
Get away from those vaccines that have saved lives for decades,
Yeah, but they'll
for
make you
almost
into a
100
gay
years.
frog. You want to be a gay frog? I don't think
I
so.
mean, I kind of want to be a gay frog.
Sounds like probably a pretty decent life, honestly.
Honestly,
When I was a kid, I thought I wanted to be a cat just because I wouldn't have to have a job and I could watch movies all day. And my parents told
hell
me that
yeah.
was unrealistic, and I am now, as almost a 40-year-old, I disagree. But still fighting my urge to not just watch movies all day and not have to work. But hey, still got to pay
Seriously.
some bills. Speaking of paying some bills, the end of this movie is approaching because
Yes.
Buck finds out that Bruce is unfortunately dead, and his reaction is, "Well, I guess it's God's will." Yep, there
Oh
goes your best
man,
friend. He's dead.
that's
Fuck him. Yeah, that guy's dead. Anyway, some shitty music later, and I mean some shitty music.
oh
And we
god.
find that the rubble of our explosion, who still survived? Is it the president? Nope.
Of course
Nikolai
not.
comes walking out, and he walks literally right into the camera,
Yeah.
and the movie
So
ends. And
is
so
the
I
message
guess
here?
he's alive and well and gonna continue his
I
plan.
yeah. So is the message here that like okay, so the president was saved from dying from a incredibly high fall onto a
Yeah,
car
he lived through
and
that.
was made invisible, able to have visions, be able to carry out this whole plan that was clearly meant to happen.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing Nikolai's stronger than all that, more powerful. Like, what is this?
I don't know. I feel like
Do
this was supposed
Christians?
to set up for another movie, and that movie never happened. But this, yeah, the way this movie ends
I
is weird because the villain wins,
yeah.
which is
Well,
set up from
and
the beginning of the first movie, where Bruce literally says, "We can't defeat him,"
yeah.
which kind of makes for a weird way to make a movie when you know from right from the very beginning your heroes are completely ineffectual and are
Here's
going to lose, and everything
here's what
they
I
do
think.
will fail.
Oh, absolutely. Here's what I think my takeaway is from this and a lot of other things I've learned in the past couple of decades about like Christianity and all that. I mean, do they think the devil is more powerful than God? I mean, I kind of feel like that's the message. Like,
Yeah. I mean, I think they should reread the Old Testament because God's a vengeful motherfucker, man. He
well,
will he
if you
will
go
smite you.
if you go from a more Gnostic way of thinking about it, you go with the Cathars. I don't know if you're familiar with them.
Yeah.
Not a lot of people are because they had an entire crusade against them.
Well,
That's a thing that happened in history. But they had this
we'll
idea
just
that
erase that part.
yeah, that the God of the Old Testament was actually the devil, and that
Yeah.
the New Testament was like a correction of,
Yeah.
that, it was,
Oh yeah. Yeah, you could get it.
so,
There's and not necessarily like there's any evidence for that, but if you just
well,
look at like
no.
the manner in which the books are constructed, the Old Testament is a lot more in line with Western religions like Greek mythology, and in terms of how they present the gods to
Uh-huh.
not be trifled with, right? Like Zeus
Right.
will
Very
fucking kill you.
capricious.
Yes,
Yes.
very on a whim. Like you must
Oh,
appease me
yeah.
at all times. Versus
Sacrifice your
the
son? All right, I was
exactly.
kidding.
Yeah, exactly, right. Versus the New Testament, which is more Eastern, which is
Yes.
almost like a Buddhist Siddhartha journey of one
Honestly?
man's journey through spirituality as he begins to understand the weight and in the importance of the role he plays in this
Yeah.
world. And it's a
And
very different kind of
a
religion.
lot of
And
like
it's interesting that like
Buddhism.
Christianity is trying to rectify those two books, which are
Yeah,
completely at odds with each other. And
absolutely they are.
yeah.
And like I there's this whole idea of like I think it's in Buddhism that basically Jesus was taught by a Buddhist teacher when
Yeah.
he was young and then
Yeah.
carried that teaching forward to a more Western
I could
religion.
I could see that totally
I
happening. Yeah,
honestly
yeah,
see it.
yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, I
I think
don't,
there's a lot of that in there.
again,
Yeah, especially if you
well,
read the New Testament. There's a lot. It's a very different book compared to
it's
the Old Testament.
very different.
And a lot of the evangelicals, man, they like to throw that Old Testament God with that New Testament. The last, especially Revelations, which is kind of the part where you see a little bit of the Old Testament God show back up. But fun
Yeah.
fact,
Well, I think
Revelations wasn't always part of the Bible.
nope.
Got
I
added
don't
in
even know if it
later.
should be.
It got added in
Um,
much
it's such a
afterwards. So
weird departure, and I don't know. I modern day
this is going to be
Christians,
an
it's
episode of tangents where we just go
it
into
really
weird
is.
tangents for a while. I
Well,
promise
because the
we're almost done.
movie, the movie's not entirely that interesting.
It's not.
This one
It's
was.
fine.
It had interesting action.
Yeah.
That's it.
I was going to say
But
like final thoughts of the movie, and then we'll get into like what we can take away from this to take into our post-apocalyptic wasteland
oh
we're
yeah,
living
into
through
our
here.
yes.
Yeah, our current wasteland. I would say my final thoughts on this movie is of the three Love the Left Behind movies, it is by far the best one. It's the
Mhm.
most campy, it's the most silly, it's the most over the top, it's the most well acted, it has the most action. It does not have the best writing, and that's kind of what makes it a little fun.
Yeah.
Um, there are some bad parts. There are some good parts. There's some parts that'll make you laugh. There's some parts that'll make you like literally pause it and just be like, "What in the fuck is going on right now?" Uh, and for that, it's a fine movie. It definitely stands out more than I thought it would. It did not make me want to watch the other Left Behind movies in our upcoming next week, more so than any other Left Behind movie did. But yeah. And go ahead. What do you got? What do you think?
All right. So my final thoughts on this. I very much almost word for word the same. I'm always happy to see a Lou Gossett Jr. movie. Always happy for that. Always happy to see him on the screen.
Mhm.
Um, the way that characters did not act like they would have in the prior movies, the way that they were directed to act by God was confusing. These I don't know. It felt like they were the parts with the tribs, the tribulation force,
Uh-huh.
kind of felt pushed to the side and
Oh
rushed.
yeah, they didn't matter at all in this movie.
And I liked that for some reason.
Yeah, yeah, it makes
I
it
was
better.
like, they are the least interesting, like the least heroic. The, I
Yeah.
mean, and above all, I hated seeing Chris go.
Yeah, Chris went
That
out
one
like a
bummed me out.
bitch, and that was
He
hard.
did.
He
But I
did go
gotta
out
say,
early on.
one of the coolest transitions I think I've seen in a movie.
It is a fun transition. I might have to try to find a vision of that online and some visual to add to our
Yeah.
podcast to get a little visual flair to it because
Yeah.
that scene does stand out in a big way. Anyway, gosh, this has been a journey through the
Yeah.
Left Behind movies. We have now
Oh
watched
yeah.
three of them, the original three,
Yep.
and next week we will return to the Wasteland to watch the other two, the two remakes. One starring
Yeah.
Nicolas Cage, the other starring our friend Hercules himself. But I guess before we get to those movies and signing off for the week, what can we take away from this movie to impart wisdom to survive our current wasteland that we find ourselves in? Any wisdom, any kernels of knowledge that we can take away from this movie? What you
I
got?
have one. I have one.
What you got?
If you're gonna steal something to survive, steal wine. Don't steal Bibles.
Nice, nice. I have two. Um, talk softly and carry a porcelain gun. And
Oh
the
yes.
last one is my president is black. My land.
Oh, death. Where is death?